Wait, speak of the devil, there he is. All right. Well, welcome everybody. It is week 11. Sorry, week 11. Uh, November 26th, 2024. And this is kind of our last, I would say, I don't know, regular class. We will wrap up next week, and I'll share a little bit about that in just a moment. But this will be the last one that kind of fits the mold. And anyway, yeah, so I'm gonna just get started really quickly with we have 3 content catalysts that are wrapping up today. It's Aodel, Hanfet, and who else? Was there one more? I thought there was one more. Why did I think there's 3? Jason. Right. All right. So we're gonna try to get done 2, and then we'll have our guest speaker Dave Cormier come in near the bottom of the hour, but we'll just kind of go from there. So, who would like to kick us off first?
I can go first.
All right.
Evening.
I'm going to give you host privileges. Right. Take it away.
All right. Good evening, everyone. So I'll just go ahead and share my screen now. Never done this before. Please let me know if you can see my entire screen. All right. Okay, so the topic for this week is actually the future implication of AI and VR on education. And actually focused on the positive aspect of it, and Ayodele focused on the negative aspects. We had actually agreed before Jason joined our topic, right? So I'll just be going through basically what I did for this for the positive aspect of the topic. So it's reshaping the future of education, AI and VR. And I used Christine Tam's TED Talk video on YouTube, and basically it just talks about first of all about 39% of teachers in Europe are over 50 years of age, meaning that there will be like a teacher shortage in the next few years, right? So what is the plan? And UNESCO actually states that we'll be needing like millions of teachers by 2030. And we know that this is actually not possible, and we obviously can't get like the ratio of the teacher and student to be equal. So how do we ensure that students are actually getting real-time support, their personalized learning needs are being met and all of that. So his TED Talk video actually like addressed it, and basically, it mentioned how AI will transform education through personalized learning. Students will be able to learn at their own pace, and they'll be able to get real-time support. I mean, like, obviously, like we have like a one curriculum that fits all. That's the expectation, but the one curriculum cannot fit all student needs in the class. So the AI will be there to like provide support for each student and enable them to learn at their own pace. And then the VR will give them like immersive learning experiences, for example, like being able to like perform a lab experiments through a VR headset or going on field trips and all of that. So those are like the benefits of the VR in education, right? And teachers will just be there to provide support, like motivation, like personal support that the AI cannot really meet. So basically, that was what my oh, sorry about that. That was what my presentation covered, and just to save us time, I okay, so this is the discussion that we'll be having in our breakout rooms. So I'll be dividing the groups into the class into 4 groups. So we'll have room 1 and 3 take the scenario of the traditional classroom and answer these questions under them. And for room 2 and room 4, yeah, we'll have you take the AI and VR enabled classroom, and then we'll also have this discussion under them. So I'll be splitting us into breakout rooms, and then we'll come back here and just discuss around whatever we talk about, right? And yeah, so I'll just split us into breakout rooms now. Trying to figure out how to do that. So sorry. Um, mm, okay. So automatically create. Okay, so we have 8 minutes to just discuss around the questions. I think we should see our rooms now. So, for the questions, I'm going to post them in the chats. Okay, let me see if I can just quickly do that. Sure, here, see.
Okay, then when you want to close it, when you click close rooms, that just gives them a minute. So whenever you decide you want to end it, just click that and they get one more minute to finish up.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, welcome back, everyone. I hope we had some good discussions. And okay, so first we'll take for the traditional classrooms. If you were in the traditional classroom and you want to volunteer to share what you guys discussed, I really appreciate that.
I was in group 1, so I can share for our group.
All right, thank you, Taylor.
We talked about how, depending on the teacher, engagement can be kind of tricky, but I think regardless, it's hard to kind of engage all of your learners all at once, all at the same time. And so we talked about that a little bit. We talked about technology sort of coming and becoming a little bit more important, and how school back in the day was designed to prepare kids to basically work as workers like on the line in the Industrial Revolution. And now we're not really preparing them for that anymore, but we're still kind of stuck in that same system. And then we talked about how that system is going to need to change significantly in order to allow space for this new sort of technology that is coming in, and how we're kind of in this kind of middle ground of blended learning where we're seeing like some tech, but we're also seeing some sort of grasping to the old ways and trying some of the new. And I don't think we'll fully get to that kind of digital learning space for another, I would guess, probably like 20, 30 years maybe. And that's kind of what we talked about.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think I totally agree with you that a balance is needed, because I know back in the day, traditional learning was basically was based on theories, right? It lacked practice. Like a lot of us didn't like have the practical experience until we went into the like market and we started getting like experiences. Yeah, so I think I totally agree with you that a balance is actually needed. And thank you for sharing. Anyone else who wants to share on the traditional classroom from the other group? Please. Thank you.
I can talk a little bit. We talked about how like student engagement is essentially mirrored by teacher engagement and like this style of teaching. Sure, there's probably some that still go about it that way, but for the most part, like it would probably be pretty boring for the teacher too, and thus boring for the students. Um, we mentioned that it's sort of students aren't really gaining anything from this style of learning. It's more of like go from you're at point A, now get to point B. And you're also not getting the opportunity to see what students are learning until a like end of unit test or something like that. And at that point, you find out, oh, did they learn or not? But now it's time to move on to point C and start working towards that. So it doesn't really give a good ability for them to develop their skills.
Yeah, thank you so much, Josh. And I totally agree in the aspect that it doesn't capture like the unique needs. Like every student is supposed to like catch at the same time everything the teacher is teaching. Yeah, so I totally agree with that. Thanks for sharing. And okay, so we'll move to the modern classroom, the AI and VR based. Anyone from the two rooms, please feel free to volunteer. Thank you.
I can grow from group 4. We talked about that a combination would maybe be better. Some concerns we had about a total tech group was that one, tech support being a problem and keeping everybody on task, because once we give out technology, sometimes we have a hard time staying on task. But that instant feedback for kids on what they're working on would be a better way than, like you said, giving feedback after you go home and mark things, or after the test when it's really too late. So we also did talk about social skills and the lack of maybe social skills being used or learned in a totally tech room if the kids aren't engaging with each other as much. So we would want that combo.
Yeah, makes sense. So everyone is just added towards like the balanced approach, right? Which I totally agree. Yeah, thank you for sharing, Lisa. And one more person from the AI and VR based classroom. From the other room, please. Thank you.
Or do you want me to?
Oh, go ahead, Jenny. It's all you.
So we said the students would be engaged. It's just a matter of, like Lisa said, if they would be on task or not. So it would have to do a lot. You'd have to do a lot of pre-teaching and practice and making sure people are on task. We also Andrea brought up the issue of what if you're in a more rural place, then is your total tech classroom? What happens when you need tech support? What happens when something's broken? Do you need to ship it away to a different location? What if your Wi-Fi is spotty? What if the power goes out? We also talked about students having more digital literacy and media literacy, but not necessarily digital citizenship or responsibility, depending on what you're doing. And yeah, we kind of agreed that it's just all about balance and trying to find that fine line of what keeps students engaged, but also helps them with their social skills.
All right, thank you so much, Jenny. And yeah, that totally makes sense. The balanced approach, obviously, because I remember like I was really, really scared because after school, like it was like I was in a world that I didn't know what I was entering into, right? Because all I've learned is the theoretical aspect. I didn't know what the practical aspect. So I wasn't sure. My confidence level was actually really low. But I'm glad that today at least like we have the VR headset. I mean, like it helps them to build like their confidence level. Like, okay, I can do this thing. I've experienced it before. I can now actually like apply it in the real world application and all of that. So I think a balanced approach, because obviously like AI can't do everything. AI doesn't know the students' needs. So we need like the teacher support as well as the AI tools and all of that. Thank you guys so much for engaging in my Content Catalyst tonight. Yeah.
Thank you, Anfet. Appreciate that. Yeah, it was good. I just wanted to, there's one thing I just wanted to highlight because it struck me. And Josh, I think you casually threw out the term teacher engagement. But I think it's something that we don't talk enough about. We're always worried about student engagement. And I feel like, we can if teachers aren't actually interested in what they're doing, like, who cares? Well, I shouldn't say who cares, but it's a lot harder. So thanks for calling that out. And with that, there he is. So just so you know, and I think I mentioned this last week when Bonnie was here. Bonnie and Dave are partners, and I like Bonnie better than I like Dave. I'm just saying that right now. I'm just telling you, I just do. So, but I feel like he would have been upset if I said, "Oh, Bonnie, you could come," and then Dave left out, and then he's pouting, and then there's all kinds of trouble in their house and their family, and I could see this whole thing turning into something really bad, from a marital perspective. I didn't want that. And that said, I kid because Dave is honestly one of these people too who, when we have discussions, my brain is always a little bit, oh, okay, there's something in there that I have to ponder, because Dave is a thoughtful person and he shares a lot of really good things. So one of my favorite lines, and I wonder if he'll even get into this, Dave talks about the community is the curriculum. That's kind of one of my famous, I don't know if that's going to be on his I don't know, tombstone. He just turned 50, so I know he's really getting up there too. So maybe he's thinking about that kind of stuff. This could well be the world's worst introduction to a speaker, I'm sure. I was going to just use AI to do it, and then I thought, no, I can mess it up as good as AI can. Why not? So Dave comes to us from Windsor again. Is there snow there yet, Dave? Yeah, I know. No, it was southern. It's southern. It's the northern US basically.
We are actually south of Detroit.
Yes, that is one of those things that I say is a mind bender when you're staring at Detroit from Windsor and you realize I'm looking north. What's going on here? How is that possible? But it is true. One of the weird anomalies in geography. So Dave, again, you asked me what you could share on today, and again, I was like, kind of do your thing, but we talked about sort of our focus today is looking on kind of future of education with AI and VR and those kind of things. So if that works for you, whatever. Anyway, Dave, welcome to my crew here in Saskatchewan.
Hi, crew here in Saskatchewan. I snuck in for 10 minutes at the end of the session, and there's a couple of comments I'd love to make. One, teacher engagement is everything. I was talking to a guy who runs a global online consortium of teacher business, and we were talking about engagement. And he goes, no, my problem is not student engagement. My problem is faculty engagement, is teacher engagement. My problem is that we have so created this as well structured as we can curriculum that teachers have lost their chance to be creative inside of it. And they're trying to make students creative, encourage students to be creative, but they're not allowed to be creative themselves. And we're worried that when they walk into class, they have no reason to be enthusiastic. Because at the end of the day, you give me an enthusiastic teacher and with no plan, like a broken hockey stick and a roll of tape, and you give me a teacher who is not excited about what's going on with all the plans in the world, and I'll take the enthusiastic teacher every day, every time. It makes a huge difference. And I think when we're talking about this internet AI VR business, I'll state my position on VR right now. I don't think it belongs in the K-12 school system. I was a consultant in a Department of Education at the time when they were trying to bring it in, and it's an absolute nightmare with 10-year-olds. Oh my, like an absolute nightmare. Like watching 10-year-olds with like headsets on when you've got like 20 of them in a room start to wander around. It's like, stop, just sit down. No, thanks. Are there places where I can imagine that it's useful? Are there environments? Are there plans? Of course, I can imagine a scenario. The problem with any technology inside of a classroom, anytime you bring it into the school system, is the opportunity cost. And so it's a term that comes out of business. If you've not heard it before, it doesn't matter. It just means that if you do this thing, you can't do that thing. And if you're trying to bring in VR and support it inside of school, keep those things running, keep the software updated, find the software that matches by the time you're done all that stuff, there are a lot of other really important good things you're not doing. And to me, I would rather, unless you've got a cajillion dollars and you've got a private school and you've got somebody who is in charge of that, like unless you've got that scenario, which is fine. And if you do, congratulations. Some people do. But outside, this colleague of Dean and I's who runs the Science Leadership Academy in Philadelphia, like he can do that there because Chris Lehman's his name. He's a fantastic educator. If you ever, I don't know if you guys have talked about him in this class, but if you check him out, his school is amazing. But he can do that in that school because they have the infrastructure in the school, not just the financial infrastructure, but they've been training the students to do the tech support for years and years. And they have a whole process and a whole system. I don't know if he's doing VR specifically, but if you've got that kind of planning in place, maybe. But VR is not what I'm here to talk about. I just like to trash it whenever I get the opportunity. Not because it isn't cool, because it's super cool, but it always seems to come into the schools because somebody's parent gave one to their kid, and they think that one kid in their house is equivalent to 30 kids in a classroom, and it just isn't. It really isn't. And that's the distinction. I think when we talk about technology and we talk about its adaptation to the classroom, it's always that conversation we need to be having, right? How fair is it to get a teacher to learn how to do this thing? Like how equitable is it to imagine a teacher, given the way that teacher training works in our system, where you might get trained once and the trainer might be good and it might be 8 hours, the worst 8 hours of your life. I've been on both sides of that. I've both been the terrible 8-hour trainer and the 8-hour trainee. So I say that with full, like I've been both those people. But there's not a lot of training out there. You got to train yourself. And so you're doing it at home. And if you've got kids and a family and a life and like to watch TV or whatever, I don't know when that's happening. So that's my first question whenever we talk about technology at all, particularly cool technology. There are technologies that are easy to use and easy to adapt and easy to bring in. And if it's light and it works and it's supported and you've got somebody, I'll give you another name, actually another American guy. His name is John Schinker, who is the director of technology for a school system in Ohio. Everything he runs in that school system works because he's got a plan for each piece of it. He got a plan for who's going to get trained and a plan for how it's going to happen. But these are systemic issues, right? You know, somebody was talking earlier about working in a rural school. It can be done, but you have to have a plan that fits that school or that school system and has to be funded appropriately. So let's put all of the fancy technology pieces aside. And I want to talk a little bit about the internets. So as Dean said in his delightful introduction, I've been in this business for a long time. And I've worked so my name's Dave Cormier. Why don't I introduce? I don't even think he said my name. So I work at the University of Windsor. I have been an educational vagabond, you might say. I started out teaching 4-year-olds in South Korea when I was 23, which is a while ago. So I've taught little guys. I taught classrooms of 7-year-olds when I was there. I taught an amazing set of footwear engineering students. Was my first community college gig. Literally, they're all footwear engineering students. I've taught in South Korea. I taught in Slovakia. I've taught here a bunch in Canada. I've done talks with people all over the world and stuff. I have been in communications. I've been a teacher. I've been in recruitment. I worked in the Department of Education in Prince Edward Island for a couple of years as the tech consultant there. A learning specialist here where I teach faculty how to deal with internet-y business. So if not deep experience on any of these paths, I've seen it from a lot of different perspectives. And when I look at Gen AI, okay, which is all the rage now, I had a great conversation with the superintendents and executive directors of the school boards in Northern Ontario a couple weeks ago. And what I told them is the same thing, basically the same thing that I'm going to say to you guys here today. the problem's not Gen AI. Gen AI is to some degree the internet with the human squeezed out of it. But the internet is the issue here. And that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about abundance, and I want to talk about what it means to trying to learn. So I'm going to give you guys, probably 20 minutes of boredom, and then we'll see if I can't get you to argue with me enough to spur some kind of conversation after that. Okay, does that, can you guys see that giant orange box? Thank you very much for your double thumbs up with all that enthusiasm. I really appreciate you. That was fantastic. Okay, so this is literally the title of my book. So Learning in a Time of Abundance is the thing that I've been thinking about for a long time. And I've sort of chosen the term abundance because I think it's the biggest piece that's changed, okay? So when we look back over education, when our education systems were started, so we've got record from 789 of a school in France that was teaching how to calculate Easter, which it turns out is really hard to do, memorizing some Psalms and a couple of other things. And that was off the side of the school. Interestingly, in the same record, about the same time, there's a story of a kid who burned down a school because he didn't want to go and get punished that day. So punishment's apparently that old inside of our schools as well. But when you look at that school system, when you look at the university, when you look at the school from when we started them inside of at least European-based cultures, we have books like this one, okay? So this is made out of sheepskin. It takes 200, the deaths of 200 sheep to make one Bible, right? And then some poor monk gets locked away in a building with bad light and carves down a whole bunch of stuff with a pen. He's got to keep thinking it. Like, it is a serious, high-end, difficult process to get information together. And the term, for those of you who have some religious bent, you may have heard this word, it's catechetical, right? So the catechetical model of teaching is when I call out and you repeat. I call out and you repeat. We see it in religious contexts, but we still see it in some teaching contexts, but it's entirely tied to the technology, right? I'm not letting anybody put their grimy paws on my 200 sheepskins, right? This thing is incredibly valuable and I need to keep track of it. And so there's a very few of them. It's not like everybody has a book in a classroom. So I sit in front of the classroom and I shout it out. And the only way you're leaving the classroom with the information is to say it back to me and memorize it, right? So we've got memorization at the core of it. We've got these incredible things. And then also we have to bring everybody into the same room to do it, right? So the technology here has a huge impact on the way you're going to teach, on what a classroom looks like. So, and it's always been that way. So this is from a school in Mesopotamia from 4,000 years ago, right? Memorize the words, memorize the stories, because the only way you're going to get them, right? So back then they were carving out one of the first languages. Need to memorize all the words. There are 14 stories that were taught. Memorize all the stories so you can do them later. So this is from middle of Europe. I told you it was 20 boring minutes. Stay with me. Those who wish to scrutinize the bosom of nature to the inmost can hear at the University of Toulouse the books of Aristotle. So they can hear the books of Aristotle, right? So you're not reading them, you're listening to them. Important distinction. As a student, when we founded the way our schools were built, students had to hear the books, right? Okay, so we just jumped forward 1,200 years. This is how my father learned. Okay, so I'm from a very small town in northern New Brunswick. It is 350 people over a 20-kilometer range. Like the middle of nowhere is where I grew up. You know, we have to leave the woods to go hunting. Like nowhere. And so my father in 1955 had an uncle who brought him these magazines. And the only things that he learned that were anything different than everybody else in his community knew were what in these magazines that his uncle brought for him once a year. Right, again, information was hugely scarce. And we have this sort of scarcity problem, even in 1955, that we were solving with our schools, right? The only place you could go to learn it. And I have 17 other examples, so and I skipped them all. So I'm doing you a favor here. When I was in school in the 80s and 90s, it was the same, right? Basically the same process. Now, there were computers, but it didn't work very well. And they certainly weren't where I turned for information. Right? So the way that I had to actually get involved in the process was to learn from it this way. Okay. So We have books like this, all about something. And if those of you who are old enough to remember this sort of thing, we used to have books like this for everything. Oh, just get the book about architecture. Go get the book about whatever. We've passed that point in our culture, right? Our schools were designed all the way along to solve the problem of information scarcity. Students were coming to our schools without knowing. And I have students in my classes who are like, oh, I don't listen to my professors. I just wait till I go home and I just learn on YouTube, because they have options, because we do not control the information the same way. I didn't actually say this. I teach Bachelor of Education students here at the University of Windsor. But my students come into class saying that they don't read anymore. They don't do those, they don't apply, they don't have to listen in those classes because they've got choices, right? They can get this stuff from any different circumstance. We've moved from a situation of information scarcity to information abundance. Now, I understand that that's a philosophical move here, but I think it's deeply important to this whole Gen AI conversation, to what our classrooms legitimately look like, okay? So everybody can learn whatever they want using YouTube or whatever, right? We can go out there, you can, my kid comes home, my 16-year-old has, I'm gonna say it, a terrible math teacher. He's terrible. He is offended when students don't understand things in his class, which I think is maybe the worst quality a teacher can have, where you assume that any misunderstanding in your classroom is the student's fault, even though all the students don't understand and the class average is like 62 at some level. So what she does is she comes home and we use ChatGPT and we use YouTube to teach her math, because I remember how to do grade 11 math. I did it once upon a time, but that was a long time ago. But I still have those options, things I would not have been able to do for her 30 years ago, right? So everybody's got those pieces right now. And all of the rest of it, right? So we've done some research here. We've talked to parents who love to brag about how they're using ChatGPT to help their kids beat the system. My kid got a 97 because they use ChatGPT to write their essay, right? So we got a problem in terms of people thinking about what school's for. Okay, that's all part of this process. So how does the technology impact our schools and people? So we have this idea that anytime we have a question, all we have to do is Google it to find the answer. Like somehow questions have answers, right? 5 years ago, if we were having this conversation and you were doing any kind of sciences, we'd have been talked about Chegg, this company that used to give all the answers to students and now is, I think it's dead. It lost 99% of its value this year because of ChatGPT, but same story, right? People coming here to get the answers because the answers are abundant. They can get them anywhere, and now they're just getting them through systems that generate them instead. But this is the piece. So Gen AI is just showing us what all this abundance is. Okay, that's the point that I'm trying to make, is that 25 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, depending on how you count, the world started to change from an information standpoint. So we all went from not having information to having it. So 2007, people start having phones that have maps in them, right? I can't function without a map on my phone anymore, even though I spent most of my life without one. Dean can't function either way, but most of us need that phone to actually function. So I actually got my 15-year-old data service because they were going to a concert, and A, they couldn't get into the concert without a digital connection, and two, I wanted them to have some freedom, and there's no way you can buy a city map anymore. So their only choice for getting a map is to use it on their phone. So in order to give them freedom, I had to tie them to a phone, which seems crazy. But that's the move. These are the moves that we're making. And these are not about Gen AI. This is about the abundance of information. So those maps are running on abundance of information. Gen AI is, Chegg is, all these things are. Search basically works on this function. So when we look at the way that students look at engagement school, I heard you guys talking about engagement a while ago. My favorite guy on engagement, I'll just make a pitch for him. His name is Schlechte. Schlecty, let's say. So the great thing about Schlechte is he talks about the difference between students who are strategically compliant and students who are engaged. So a strategically compliant student is the one who does exactly what they're told. and they do it exactly the way they were told, because they go and they figure out what the game of school is, they figure out all the rules, and they beat it, right? That student isn't necessarily learning. That student is not engaged. That student has figured out the system, right? And right now, if you're a student who has figured out the system, all of these tools will allow you to beat the system as it was constructed before all over the place, unless we make some adjustments, right? But again, the adjustment that I'm saying is not about Gen AI, although, yeah, it works really well. The adjustment is about the abundance and the access to information. So this is from an article from last year from a kid, and I think it really illustrates what I think the core problem is. In reality, it's very easy to use AI to do the lion's share of the thinking while still submitting work that looks like your own. Right? This is a kid who understands the test. They know what the challenge is, and they can go through and use these things. And maybe they're doing the writing by themselves, but they're not doing the things I care about. They're not doing the deep thinking. They're not understanding how research works. They're not understanding how to put ideas together, how to make an argument, how to do any of these things, right? And that's what's threatened here. Okay, so another example from my students in my classroom. So my students are all 21, 22, mostly. A couple of older students, but mostly at that age. I give them an article on, it's from the New York Times from 1977. And it is about how TV is killing our schools. And it's about how kids these days, all they do is watch the television, and all they do is come to school and talk to each other about television, and they don't go to bed anymore, and they don't talk to each other about anything else, and they don't play. All they do is television. Now, obviously, I've given this article to show them that this whole interaction between technology has happened before. Some of this stuff is just people like waving their hands in the air, and everybody who gets old, pointing at myself, I'll point at Dean. You can't see that I'm pointing at him, but I am. We get to that point sometimes where we have that sort of desire to blame the next generation for doing stuff that we actually did too. And so this is a recurring issue in this case. But I have my students reading it. And this is where I think there is a difference. So one of my students, her name's Isabella, she looks at me, she's about, I don't know, 3 minutes into reading this article, because I get them to read it in class because I know they're not going to read it out. There's reasons for that. My students have 10 concurrent classes. Like it's ridiculous. It's I understand why they don't read it at home. But anyway, she's reading it. So 3 minutes in, she's like, she gives me a whole head twist and the stretch and the turning around. And I'm like, Isabella, you having a hard time with that article? She goes, well, TLDR, like too long, didn't read. I get the point. I can get to the end of it. And I'm like, so what do you want to teach again? And she goes, oh, grade 5. I said, okay. Do you want your grade 5 students to be able to read for longer than that? And she stops and she's like, oh my God, I don't read anything anymore. I don't read anything past a certain. And then all around the classroom, my students, one after another, one of them's like, I don't watch the first 30 minutes of a movie anymore. I just skip 30 minutes in and then I watch from there because I can't stand the exposition. And if I miss anything, I'll just look it up online. And they start going around the room, realizing one after another that their normal practices, the practices that they even had 5 years before, not like this generation, but these people who used to be able to do these things no longer do them. Because we have so many things coming at us, so many options. I can watch a movie from minute 30 going forward because I know I can check on 1,000 different websites what happened in the first 30 minutes if I have to. I can rewind, I can do all these options are part of our processes right now. But when you look at, say, the way an essay is structured, it's structured in the scarcity model, structured all the way back. Okay, so technology has broken our narrative about what it means to learn. I'm going to give you guys one more example and I'll get us out of this. And I'll move towards what I think we can do about it. I was teaching a class, I'm going to say 6 months ago. And I was teaching a class on humanizing learning and how to really bring the human part to the process. And we were talking about citation in an essay. One of the people who were taking the class, PhD student, goes, hold on. And you know when you see someone's face and you know they've just cracked, like they've had enough and they're not taking it anymore? she'd had enough and she was not taking it anymore. And she's like, no, 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 no. You're talking right now about me going out and reading a whole bunch of stuff and whatever else. No, 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 no. That's not what the syllabus says. That's not what the assignment says. The assignment says I have to cite my work. The assignment doesn't say I have to go read all this stuff that you're talking about right now. The assignment says I have to cite my work. So what I do is I go to Google Scholar, I search for the thing I want, I find an article, I hit Control F, I go through that article, I find the quote I want, I copy and paste it, I put it in my essay. I have cited my argument. And I'm like, but that's not what I want you to do. She goes, that's not my fault. It's not my fault. I am doing what I was told. I am playing the game of school. I am using all the processes at my command. You have not told me not to do them. Nobody's told me not to use Google Scholar. Nobody's telling me not to hit Control F on my keyboard. I'm doing the things I'm supposed to do within the rules. And I'm not learning any of the things you clearly want me to learn. And that's what the technology does, right? It takes the things that used to teach stuff for us, right? So if I was writing an essay in 1992, I had to go to the library and read books. I did not want to. I tried to get out of it. I tried to write an essay without doing it once and I failed. I had to go. And in going, I had to at least skim those papers, and I tried to skim as little of them as possible. But despite my best efforts, I read something. Despite my best efforts, I engaged in the process of writing a paper because I had no friggin' choice. It wasn't because I wanted to. I was a terrible student. But I had to. And right now, the best students, well, second best, the second best students, the strategically compliant students, are writing their papers this way. And the worst thing is they don't even realize that they're not learning the things we want them to learn, right? So they're going and getting all the references they're supposed to. They're getting all the documents they're supposed to. They're writing the paper they're supposed to. And in it, they're not learning any of the lessons that we actually want them to learn, right? So when we look at this, and I'm gonna cut this off here. I have a bunch of other slides, but we don't need to look at them. When we look at these technologies, they allow students to break that narrative of the things we were doing before. And it forces us to go back to the root reasons why we're doing something, right? ECi&I makes it really, really obvious that this is a problem. And it works really well. There's all kinds of stuff that it does. But I'm on record as saying, and there's a lot of people who don't agree with me about this position, but I'll give you mine. I don't think there's an AI literacy. I think that there are literacies and you need to apply them to AI. So my experience in using something with like generative AI is that the skill that I need to be able to use it effectively is to understand a field well enough to know if the stuff that I'm getting back is true. And if I don't, then the next skill I need is the research skill to be able to take that stuff and go out and do the research to figure out whether or not those things are true. Those are exactly the same skills I needed 5 years ago. They're the same skills I needed 20 years ago. They're the same skills I needed 1,000 years ago. They're the same skills, right? The problem is that the things we do to try to get people to develop those skills don't work anymore. Skills are the same. Still need to teach them. We just need to take different approaches to actually teaching those skills. So I'm going to give you a really simple example. I'm going to ask you guys right now, we're going to do a live example. I know I've been blabbing at you for long enough. Dean, can you take me off Spotlight so I can see the rest of the group? Thanks. So I'm going to we're going to do a live example. I see no one is asleep. Thank you. I appreciate your patience. So I want you to tell me whether or not, let's just do a poll in the chat room first, whether or not you should take vitamin C. Just give me a yes or a no in the chat room. We'll start with this. Excellent. Half and half. Okay. So now in whatever internet place you want to go, just make sure when you come back, you put Google : and then give us your sort of version of the answer. Don't give me a link or anything. Tell me what it tells us. Could be ChatGPT, could be whatever it is you want to use. I want you to come back with one piece of evidence to support your position or against your position. You go and do a search, you find something different. So just go and find something and tell me come back and Give us a quick version. This is perfect. It's 50-50. My kid's textbook at school says you should. My kid's teacher at school says you shouldn't. How do we live in this world? Yeah. Do you know the founder, not the founder, but the founder of like we only take vitamin C. His name is Linus Pauling. He took 18,000 milligrams of vitamin C a day. He said it was going to help you live another 25 years. Most people get enough vitamin C from a balanced diet. No scurvy for those people. So, Google AI overview. You want to support your immune system, work properly to protect your body from disease. I'm going to take Miranda's response back. So, and we're not going to do this example, but I do this in my classroom with students. I pick a controversial issue and I start this process, right? So what do you think first? Let's do a quick take on it. Okay, great. Then I move on to, and we won't do it today because I won't bother you with this, but if you feel like it, try it later. If you look at the actual research evidence, the only evidence we've found, and because I've had this done with a couple of classrooms, actual like from the Mayo Clinic evidence is that if you take vitamin C every day, your cold will be 8% shorter on average. But that's the only advantage. So then the next step of the question comes in, which is, should I take vitamin C? Is it worth the cost? Is it worth the effort? Is it worth all those other things you're forgetting to do because you're remembering to do this? So it ends up being a fun question, but what it does is it actually trains the research skill, right? That's the actual skill we want because we want people. Now, I don't care if you take vitamin C, it's not going to hurt you. The beautiful thing about vitamin C is take as much as you want, as long as you don't take 2,000 milligrams a day or 18,000 like our friend Linus Pauling. It's a nice, non-controversial article. What I love doing with my students, and I'm just going to drop this like a bomb in the classroom and I won't go through it, is I love doing this with learning styles because it makes everybody riled up. Because half in my classroom, every one of my students believes that learning styles is true. And all of the quick evidence that you'll find online now says it isn't, that there's no such thing as a visual learner or whatever. It kind of depends on how you look at it. But it's a really good example in an education classroom to get people looking at research and starting to make like, well, if this published article says it's true and this published article says it isn't true, how am I supposed to decide? It's a good question. Oh, Willingham. Oh, Dean, you're hurting me. Hate that guy. But Daniel Willingham's a good example of somebody who does not like it. The same way that if you guys are doing any constructivism in here, you could bring in Paul Kirshner who will say that constructivism is the worst thing that ever happened in a classroom and that it's a waste of time and that you should not worry about the feelings of your students. Now, I happen to disagree with him because I totally just misrepresented his position. But that's just the thing, right? What do we need these students to be able to do? In 1992, I needed them once in a blue moon to go to a library, I guess. But now, every student who has a phone is being hit by TikTok every day, right? Every student is being hit by thousands of messages that are trying to convince them to do all kinds of things. Whether it be people being groomed as white nationalists, whether it's people being told not to eat, whether it's people whatever it happens to be, they're being bombarded. The skills they need, the research skills they need, are exactly the same research skills that we needed 50 years ago. It's just we need them more often, right? Still need to be able to evaluate whether or not something's true or not. But we need it all the time, right? And these got to find different ways of working around these technologies to be able to develop the same, well, working with these technologies, that's fine too, but to develop those same literacies, right? And it's sometimes about finding the right answer, and sometimes it's about making judgments with values, right? Because we don't do a lot of that all the time either. We don't look at science as a value-based process. And sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's true or false, and that's fine. But all these nuances are part of real life. They're part of the real life that when we talk about the future, and you guys are talking about Gen AI and its impact on the future, and that's where I go with this conversation. When I talk about preparing every one of the kids in front of me for their future, what I'm trying to do is give them the tools they need to be good citizens. I want them to be good voters. I want them to be good at figuring out whether or not people are lying to them, right? And those are all the exact same skills we wanted them to learn before. They're just harder to teach now. So there's my rant. How's that?
You
We
said a
quite
few
now, Dean?
things. You said some things I don't know if I fully agree with, but I like that. I like that.
Like what?
Well,
Got my dukes
okay,
up.
so all right, yeah, we'll go dukes up a little bit here. So the whole idea of now I get it, right? When you talk about there's no new literacies, it's just all literacy, and then there's because that we've talked about digital literacy and media literacy and
Sure.
all these other literacies, right? So yes, they fit under some big umbrella
Mhm.
ish. So I don't know if we're talking about semantics and
We are
or
talking
I think what I what I believe about some of these technologies is not when you don't understand a little bit about how they work under the hood.
Mhm.
And so I don't know if that's a literacy or just, an
I-
understanding of context. I
I'm
mean,
going to stop you right there. I
yeah.
totally agree. Understand how the tool works. That's fine. But to me, when we talk about cultural and societal literacies, I really wish everybody had learned to use Excel. It's a really good tool. Or everybody learned how to use the search box properly. Really good tool. I don't think it's a literacy. The literacy to me is the research. It's the reason why. It's connected to the social thing you want to do. Right? To me, the meaning of literacy that I take out of the multi-literacy guys from the 90s, G and all the rest of those folks, the way that I mean the word. And I'm happy for you to have your own meaning. I'm not trying to tell you that
No.
your usage of the word is wrong. When I mean the word, literacy is something that connects to culture, connects to purpose, connects to the reason why you're doing something. Whereas a skill or whatever, anything else you want to call it, is figuring out how the thing here works so you can do the thing. So a literacy to me is figuring out that I want to go to Toronto, and the skills are about driving and about maps and whatever else. But the driving and the maps aren't the thing that I need. I'm trying to get to Toronto. Not that any of you ever want to go to Toronto, but
Right. But if you don't, I guess, if you want to take that analogy, if something goes wrong along the way, and
Mhm.
I'm thinking more about what I see people not understanding about let's use a slightly older example is the monetization of social media, right? So Facebook and with the way people use Facebook. And so
Yep.
so the literacy isn't necessarily in and how you get the most value out of that space, but part of it is understanding that you are the product, right? Like an understanding how information flows and what privacy means and all of those kind of things. Like that is being literate in my mind around how this works. And
That's
again,
fine.
I don't know if we're splitting hairs or if we're talking about
I'm happy
different
with you
things.
calling that literate. Are you willing to give me the research and understanding how to do that as a higher version of that literacy?
I think I am because I haven't thought about it as much as you have. So I like that. I like thinking about that though. I think there's value in that. So I
Yeah.
like that pushing in that space.
I'm not fussy about trying to overly define the word literate. The thing that the biggest piece that I'm saying about the Gen AI literacy, the point of this, and I mean to some degree I'm saying it argumentatively just to get people thinking about it, right? Because you brought me in here to be annoying, and that's what I'm trying to do. But the most important message there is that you already have 97% of the tools that you need, right? If you know why you're using ChatGPT to write something, and so if I use ChatGPT to talk to you, to write you an instruction manual for how to fish lobster, which is what I grew up learning how to do, I can put that in there and look at it and go, yeah, don't do that. I'll take that out. You know what? This is missing this other thing that you really need to do. I can put it in there, and then I can send it to you. In that, the thing that I needed to do to use ChatGPT was give me a step-by-step process for breading lobster, which I mean, okay, call it a literacy. I do need to know that it's not going to be right or full or complete. Okay. But I already think that about everything. Right. So if I see a journal article about lobster fishing, the first thing I'm going to do is open and go, do they know how to lobster fish? And I'm going to check it. So I already have that literacy of checking a thing to see if it's right on the things that I already know something about. And I also hopefully, and I would say this is the most important literacy, if there's a new 21st century literacy, it's humility. It's, oh, I don't know enough to be able to decide about this. Because we have access to all of the conversations and all of the information. But you know what I can't do? Read a vaccination report to tell you whether or not that vaccine's effective. I have no business reading that report because I don't understand it. What I need to do is find somebody who does understand it, preferably more than one somebody, and have that conversation with them. Right? That humility of, I can't just do my research about something I don't know anything about. That, I think, is a real new literacy.
Right. Yeah. That arrogance of, so yes, this abundance means that, hey, anybody can learn anything. Awesome. That's great. But that's bad.
Especially if that thing is like a chainsaw.
Well, right. and no, like it's great to have exposure to a lot of that, but to be able to understand, yeah, like the level of understanding that I'm going to glean from reading 2 blog posts and somebody's Twitter feed that's not real. That's not, again, there comes a, like when you say humility, I'm thinking about the literacy of understanding how information works, why it's there, who published it, why would they put that there, what do they have to gain from it, what else do I know about these people that might suggest it's not a trustworthy, or it is a trustworthy source, all of those kind of deep dives.
That list was totally applicable in 1750. Everything you just said there was exactly what I would have told somebody.
Yeah, you just didn't have to go very far to get there.
That's right.
You got there quick. Okay, yeah, that guy, that's the guy. We're done.
Yeah, and that's what I mean by, although to be fair, I was told my whole life to like find out what city the book was published in and put that in the. I don't know why I was doing that. There's all of those other research processes I was told to do I didn't understand. Was it a good publisher? I can promise you that 19-year-old Dave did not know whether or not that was a good publisher or not. So that model wasn't perfect either. Though now we can actually, if you want to spend the time, move a little forward. Does anybody else have any other sort of?
Yeah, this is just Dave and I having a beer at the pub going back and forth, but the rest of you are a part of this too. So go ahead.
Anybody else? Rants accepted. I can wait all day.
I do want you to talk more, because this is another, and maybe this will spur people on, like because I don't know how I feel about the idea that the whole compliance around technology is just allowing people to play the game of school and win at it better, and that they're losing the yeah, we got other things that are more interesting. Kathleen's got a whole thing going on there. But that's the part I don't know. I'm not sure I'm all the way with you on that one. I'm not saying it's not making it easier. I don't know that we have the research that says we're not learning as much because of it. And maybe that's not what you're saying, Dave. So maybe I'm extrapolating a little bit more from that idea.
I wouldn't believe the research that said we were or weren't learning as much, because the vast majority of that John Hattie style what we're learning research is based on the final grades that people get in classes.
Sure.
Which is utter nonsense. Particularly the meta study stuff, which takes like 800 different studies and it's nonsense. So to me, what I'm worried about is what the individual kid in front of me is getting out of it. Right. And so in my students in my classroom, which I'll speak to about in this response, they will use the tools to get around the point I'm trying to make if I'm not careful. That's what I mean. Not about what they get in grades or whatever. I mean in the conversation I'm having with the kids in front of me. That's because it allows them to use to do the same actions, right? I put a citation in, whatever else, without going through the process that I'm hoping at least they need to do. Yeah, go ahead. Anita.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just trying to process the whole literacy, digital literacy, and the whole thing. And
Sure.
yeah, I know you mentioned that the first skill is being versed in a particular field, and then knowing that this is incorrect, and then like using your research skills afterwards. But today, like we have a lot of information on the internet. How do we actually teach students to be literate? I mean, I feel like for us to teach students to be literate, because there's a lot of information on the internet, we first of all need to teach them how to be media literate. Because obviously for you, we have already been through like different stages of, learning to understand that this information is wrong. So how do we teach students that, okay, when they see this and information that is wrong, it is actually wrong? So I feel like the media literacy is still very important in today's world. I mean, that's the process that we would take to actually teach students to become literate before they can now apply their research skills. I'm just trying to figure the whole thing.
I mean, I hear you. In a sense, we're banding around words that, and I almost wish I hadn't said the word, because I'm not trying. I definitely don't want us arguing about the meaning of literacy and sort of making that the point of the issue. But take media literacy as a good example. So in 19, I'm guessing here, 17, Edward Bernays, who is the grandfather of modern marketing, started the Torches for Freedom campaign. You guys heard of the Torches for Freedom campaign? Oh, it's a good one. He convinced women that smoking made them independent. It was a campaign that he had that had women marching down the street with cigarettes over their head like they were torches. And it like multiplied by factors of 20 the amount of cigarettes that were sold to women. Right? That's a lack of media literacy. They got sold, the same as things like cooking with gas and the idea that a diamond is 2 months' salary and all these other things are all marketing campaigns that were done by Edward Bernays, the same guy, that changed the way that people look at things. And we lack that ability to look at something and go, oh, that's the way it's supposed to be, and not realize that it's actually a marketing campaign. So our media literacy problems are definitely important, but they're not new. Right? Like we definitely need people to understand when they're being sold something. Again, what I said earlier, which is my whole goal of my whole career, which is trying to help people be better citizens and be better voters. Right? We do a really bad job of training people to see through the perspectives that are being sold to them by our politicians as well. Like to me, that's all the same part of the same package, but we definitely need to focus on those things for sure. That's a lot more serious a response than I was expecting when I started. What policies or frameworks do you think schools should adopt to address AI usage? Panic. I think that's a good first step. I think the biggest piece of this is not to put the weight on the teacher in the classroom. I think that's the biggest issue, because I don't think there's an effective way to train all the teachers who are out there to have some kind of subtle information literacy to understand how ChatGPT works. I don't think it's fair to expect it of them. I don't think it's fair to them to adopt their pedagogy this quickly. Over 5 years, maybe, but not right away. So I think there's a short-term version that has to do with giving them like very easy, simple pathways to understanding what they can do in their classroom. So, the English classes here in Ontario, the writing classes are all being done in class. So, and they're being done by paper. So we've lost all of our adaptations. My kid came home the other day, or last year, I'm sorry to keep using my kid as an example, but, and said, I'm not allowed to think about my paper at home. Like, that's the solution that's being used in her class. Don't think about it. Meaning they don't want them to go home and use ChatGPT to write the whole paper, but my very eager 16-year-old wanted to work on her paper, but she was told not to. So I think coming up with some basic guidelines that work for your district and having them out to people in a very digestible way is the short-term approach. And I think that should be done by the curriculum leaders in those different subjects. So if you're doing science, these are the three things you need to remember. If you're doing math, these are the three things you need to remember. If you're doing social studies, these are the three things. Like, I think we need those really small packaged by discipline pieces. And then after that, we need to start the training piece, right? We need that longer term process.
So let's just hypothetically say we don't have any of that support.
Like,
'Cause
say
we
now,
don't.
like maybe in your life, just for example.
Yes, just hypothetically, of course.
Another adorable child. Sorry, I was distracted.
Yeah.
Like, what would it be?
Well,
teach?
like, I think we're just stuck thinking, what do we need to do? And I think we had another speaker from West Vancouver talk about how they led that whole process because they didn't have that they didn't wait for the ministry to put something out or their division to put something out. They just led it because
Who was your speaker?
what was
Kennedy.
yeah.
Oh,
Kennedy,
yeah,
Chris.
but I mean, yeah, he can do that, but you can't in the same way.
Well,
That
yeah.
guy's like, yeah, no, he's great.
Yeah.
But what he can do is not what you can do. Like,
Right.
he's been at this a long time. He's been in leadership roles his whole career. So what do you teach?
Lots of things. But
Give me one.
EAL, Christian
Oh,
ethics and the health
that's the
9 mix,
hardest.
and workplace math.
Oh man, EAL is the hardest.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I started out, like I said, I started out teaching in Korea, right? So I started out doing EFL, but everybody I talk to who's doing that kind of business is like, ChatGPT is the best sort of in-class system for getting people to work through languages. This is super, super interesting. Like, there's a lot of power there. And what you want to do it's about going back to what you're trying to get done. So you look at an EL classroom, if what you're trying to do is get people's verbal competence, like to that point where they can express something that so that somebody else can understand it, those systems are really, really good practice because you can do it without somebody else listening. Right. So you can make a bunch of mistakes. So for somebody, but then you need to convince the student in front of you that this is going to help them.
Okay.
Right. So if you take that student, you say, look, what's our goal here? I want it so that when you walk into the store, I don't know what kind of relationship, let's assume you have a really great relationship with the student. You want it so when you walk in the store and you say, I want this thing, you want somebody to be able to understand you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I want you to do is practice it because these systems will bork up the language if you don't get it right. So you can try it over and over and over again until you slowly start to morph your language into a way that somebody can actually understand you. But it's the same thing. You got to focus back on what the actual goal is. The goal isn't to get them to write the thing, hello. The goal is not to get them to write the thing down or whatever else. The goal is to have them change, like improve. So EL is a good example of where it can be an absolute nightmare, right? Or it can be super, super powerful if the goal is aligned with what the tools can do. Is that too fast? Too much?
No, that's awesome. Thank you.
Okay. I don't know.
But
Rita-
I just posted a link there to a slide deck that I had to sign up for and do whatever. So now it's free and I just give it away to everybody. It's free anyways. It's just that I'm now making you sign up for the thing to get there. But what I liked about this one is because this is what I'm telling folks is like, I don't care if you use AI at all in your classroom. It doesn't matter to me, but I think to not have the conversation with your students about it, to understand it, like just let's have a talk around like what's actually happening right now and how are we going to wrap our heads around like that's to me that like a starting place for this work is just let's talk about how it's impacting, right?
I think that's true. I also think that you need to keep in mind that all of those students have parents. If we're talking about the K-12 system, and every one of their parents is very, very, very firmly believes probably something different than the other parent. So you've got like this is one of those really controversial issues where some parents are like, you shall never, and other ones are like, let's get it done so we can get out and get that dinner done, right? And so that conversation, I think, to sort of going to wrap this in response to Anna Christine's question, which is how do we, it boils down to staying clear on what you're trying to get done. You just can't teach it necessarily the same way as you did before. If it's and like John Warner, who is a absolutely fantastic educator, will tell you that he's an English literature educator, stopped using essays in 2015 because he realized they weren't doing the things he wanted them to do. Now you can say, well, I need students to be able to write essays because when they get to college, they're gonna have to write essays. Okay. But you don't believe that, Dean?
No, I'm saying that's not a great motivating.
No,
No,
but
I know it's a reality. I'm just saying
It's a
if
reality.
that's your only thing, it's like that's kind of a weak. But I get it. Yeah, sure.
But then teach the form and function of writing an essay, but also remember to teach the things we actually care about, if assuming we care about the same things. But how to research, how to understand a concept, how to negotiate uncertainty. Well, I've got these two things and I'm not sure which one of them is true. Well, maybe both of them are true, maybe neither of them, or maybe one of those ideas is really bad. But those are conversations you need to learn how to have. And again, they're the same conversations as before. We just got to look at those goals and really focus on them. Letter grades prior to high school. So I don't like grades so much. I also don't like homework. I got a lot of so I'm of the oh, what's his name? Alfie
Alfie
Kohn school
Kohn.
of homework. I'm not a big fan. I don't know that grades, to me, grades are mostly used as power. They're leveraged to try to force people to, they're basically a giant stick that's shaped like a letter. And I mostly don't like them. If I could get away with never using them, I wouldn't. If you look at the history of grades, we're looking at, sorry, I keep doing this to you guys. We're looking at 1785, 1792, and in both cases at Yale and at Cambridge, they were used because the students were too lazy and they needed to punish them. Basically, I think of grades as punishment. So don't like them. Alfie Kohn's work is great. Developing literacy will also involve teaching conceptual understanding. Sure will. Absolutely. And again, that's what I want, right? There are problems there. There are problems of having the next course and the next teacher in the system. So if you teach one way and somebody else teaches another, there's a lot of issues. I'm not saying it's easy. What I am saying is that I can always feel good if I can say I'm doing this because I really want them to be able to learn this. And then if somebody questions my thing, I'm like, I really want them to learn this. And if it's somebody who has power over me and they're like, well, I don't want you to do it that way, you're like, okay, but this is why I was doing it. Because I really want them to be able to decide whether or not they should eat carbs. Here's a great example that happens to half the teenagers in high school. Turns out that not eating carbs starves your brain, but lots of people will tell you not to do it. And so I want them to have those basic skills so they can function as citizens in this really complex, abundant society. But I said that already. So now I'm just repeating myself. Dean, I've been here for about an hour. Shall I let you get back to your business?
Well, I mean, again, I feel like this is why I like having you here is because like you aren't afraid to kind of go there and say that and do that, which I love. I think that's I mean, you know, it was funny because in our first sort of opening session that Hannafat led, she kind of posed some questions around, you know, the use of technologies versus not using technology. And I mean, at the end of the day, everybody's, you know, gets it. Like it's not one or the other. However, what this does always remind you of is just like people, and I don't want to say sparring. That's not really what's happening here, but you know what I mean? Like we're just kind of interested in something and negotiating and talking and thinking. And it's, I mean, yes, we're using technology, obviously, that's bringing us all together, but it really is, you know, kind of fading behind. We're not thinking about it. That's not the point of all of this. But I mean, I think sometimes it's the simplest things, right? That sort of provoke the most powerful learning. And it's just always a good reminder of that, right? Like in the end, it's like, what's the outcome? The outcome of having you here, Dave, was to provoke thinking. That was the outcome of this. That's what I wanted to have happen. Mission accomplished.
I want to just, I missed Lisa's comment earlier about her friend, the conspiracy theorist. Yeah, that's my, if I could solve one problem in the whole world right now, that's probably the one I would solve. The idea that people can do their research, like that search is the same as research, that somehow talking about something that I don't really know about, I can read a couple of things and suddenly be informed. The funny thing is, you know, maybe this will be the last comment before I get out of your hair. one of the things I found in my sort of work around Gen AI is that no one that I talk to thinks their profession is at risk from Gen AI because they think their profession is very complex and very complicated, like very difficult. But they're more than willing to point out someone else's profession that's really simple and whatever, that can be replaced. Because they don't see the complexity in other people's work. And in fact, I talked to someone else who does that exact. A great example is my bookkeeper. So I have the organizational skills of a small rodent. So I crumple up bits of paper and shove them in the bottom of things, and it's ridiculous. I've gotten a little bit better, but it's like tax-wise, it's a problem. So I finally found a fantastic bookkeeper. She's amazing. She doesn't bring me back very often, but man, does she handle things well for me. It's perfect. Works out great for me. So I was asking, she's asking me the other day, she's like, what do you do anyway? Like, I see all these weird charges come into your account. I have no idea what's happening, but what do you do? And I'm like, well, I talk to people about things. People pay me to talk occasionally. Like, it's weird, but that's what I do. And we were talking about Gen AI, and she goes, yeah, it's funny. People think that bookkeepers are going to go out. She looks at me, she goes, it's been 45 minutes. Have we talked about a single number the whole time you've been here? I'm like, no, we haven't. She's like, I'm a counselor. I counsel people with their lives. And occasionally I counsel numbers. But Gen AI is never going to replace the work I do because at the end of the day, you're incompetent, she says to me. And you need me here to fix this for you. And I'm like, you are correct.
And she charges you for it.
What's that?
And she charges you for it.
She does. And I'd happily pay her. Happily pay her. But this is it. When we look at other people's work, if we think we can do the research, like somehow we have the arrogance in like an hour or a day, let's say you've taken a week, that somehow you can learn enough nuance to disagree with somebody who spent their whole life doing with something. No, you can't. Forget it. And that's the thing, right? That's where the humility is so important. That we look at these things and go, no, that doesn't mean we shouldn't have opinions. It just means we've got to be careful with them. Anyway, my book.
Dave, thank you. Thank you. I know you are always willing to kind of share and provoke, as I said. In a positive way, and I'm not interested in people just always saying the things that I 100% agree with. I'm thinking when people go, wait a minute, I haven't thought about it in that way before. And it's not that I disagreed with what you said today. I just haven't thought of that in that way.
Sure.
And I always appreciate kind of a different perspective. Push my thinking and hope everybody else. So thank you, my friend. Go enjoy a beverage or whatever is going to happen there.
I will.
I hope I get out to Windsor again and go to that nice little
look us
pub
up
that
if you're out.
you took us to. Yeah, thank you.
For sure.
All right.
Take care, folks.
Cheers.
Enjoy yourselves. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, let's just take a very quick break, maybe just 3 minutes, just to the bottom of the hour, and then whether it's Jason or Odell to start us off. Who's gonna start us off? So I make sure that they have hosts. Is it gonna be Jason or Odell?
I will pick.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna make you co-host so you can practice. Did I do that already? Maybe did that already. All right, back in a few here. Yeah, you're co-host, so you're good. All right. Just gonna grab water and I'll be All right, take it away, Odell.
Okay, thank you very much. I just posted my video and I want to believe we've gone through it, looking at implications of emerging technologies on the future of education. And from the video, I actually shared few points on, yes, I'm a fan of emerging technologies. I try to differentiate technology from this emerging technologies, just like they've called it, like fancy technologies that we use now, which is AI, VR, mixed reality, and all that. So these are the technologies we are talking about because they kind of have, according to research, they kind of have more potential and more impact on education. And from all that has been discussed, and I think from the previous discussion we had in our group when Anifa presented, Jason was mentioning something about they having a virtual reality headset in their school. They had one, and in my mind, I'm like, this is part of the challenges I'm talking about. Yes, virtual reality is good, but if you look at the costs, like it's very expensive, especially in a school environment where we are trying to engage learners and one-on-one teaching, or we're trying to meet the individual needs of students. Then if in such a situation we want to use virtual reality or mixed reality for each student, how can schools be able to afford such instruments? And that's one of the challenges, despite the fact that this technologies are good, but they are very, very expensive. And I think Dave also made reference to that in his discussion when he was talking about the cost of updating softwares, the cost of renewing the softwares. And by the time you finish, because that is one thing with technology, you need to always update softwares, you need to always you need to always be updated on everything you do. So by the time you get the tool set itself, then from 2000 and let's say 2022, now 2024, you need to update the software. In the next 2, 3 years, I'm sure better versions of VR sets will come out. So the one we're using for this year might be obsolete. You need to buy another one. You look at the money that goes into all this, how many schools can actually afford them. And my video speaks a lot about most of these things, but I think what I just want to focus for this night was that aspect of bias and fairness. And the reason I picked on this bias and fairness was because I came across an article recently, a post on LinkedIn, where they were talking about this AI tutor called Camingo. Is an AI tutor by Khan Academy, and they intend rolling out this AI tutor across countries probably before the end of next year. They have the mind of rolling it out. Then a research was conducted, I think they said from Stanford or so, just to get an understanding of the AI model and how it depicts learners. And funny enough, the model basically depicted Latin American males as struggling STEM students. And it also depicted them as, I saw that post on LinkedIn. It also depicted Asian students as low performance when it comes to STEM disciplines. And looking at those responses from the model, the conclusion from there was that if, for instance, a real Latin American student or an Asian student goes to any of this model to type in, what do you think of me as a Latin American K-12 learner who wants to do science in the university and stuff like that. And such a response comes to that learner. How do we think this learner will feel? One, it can deprive them of their identity as a science student. There's something we call depending on the subject you do, your identity in the course or in the career you intend to study. Now, if that model produces such a response to a learner of that nature. One, the learner's sense of belonging in the STEM academic field kinds of depreciates. It might affect the learner, the way the student sees himself or herself as a future STEM career person. In terms of academic outcome, it would affect that student because now there is this mindset already the AI or already, because some students believe AI is being programmed. And for this AI to be programmed that way, definitely it's an understanding of the technologies behind the software. So there is that mentality that definitely Latin Americans, male, we are not good in science. So why should I go into this field in the first case? It would affect the academic outcome because it's already in their mindset that they can't perform very well. So, there are a lot of things that are attached to this, and I think that is very unfair in such situation. So that really got to me, and it got me thinking because we're trying to develop or like say enhance students' identity when it comes to STEM disciplines. And here we have a model that kinds of give wrong information or portrays stereotypical ideas about this same discipline we are trying to promote. So that's the negative side of it I'm looking at, apart from the costs that we've been talking about. And yeah, just from the discussion Anifat had and from what Dave said, we looked at the dehumanization of learning experience and the engagement of teachers. How do we feel as individuals if AI or even this VR, AR we're talking about actually takes over our class from us? Taking over our class means, when students now become over-reliant on these technologies without necessarily wanting to come to the class or without necessarily wanting to follow whatever instruction it is that the teacher has given. And I think these are just my views on this, coupled with what has been done in the video. So I actually, because of time, I don't want to put us in group. I have 3 questions, but so that Jason could also speak, I would rather appreciate if we could just take a general discussion on this first question, and everybody is welcomed to give their idea. I think it will make it more faster than going into small groups and we still have a presenter that needs to present. So the first one is, what are your views regarding the potential drawbacks of utilizing AI tools like VR, AR, and Gen AI in education, particularly in terms of their negative implication for students' learning? And I want us to look at it, especially for those of us that are teachers in the classroom. Let's look at it from our classroom experience or from our classroom setting. So I would appreciate everybody to share. Yeah, the floor is opened. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. That was really interesting. One of the things as far as a drawback that I've really been kind of going down a rabbit hole on is privacy concerns and data security. And I don't know a lot about AR, MR, VR, to be totally transparent. If they require apps or like software, that kind of thing, that I've been struggling to find educational apps that actually are like COPPA compliant or even meet Canadian privacy requirements. It's shocking how many are used in schools without those safeguards. Those
Yeah.
are my thoughts.
Yes, when it comes to virtual reality, actually, there is no how you can use a virtual reality without actually putting in some informations. And these are applications that need to be downloaded. The same thing applies to augmented reality, which they are more like apps that are used on iPads or tablets, but it requires a sign-in, it requires a login. And funny enough is that many of these apps, even like the AI tools we are talking about, the Gen AI, though they appear to be free, but you realize the free versions are actually those ones that produce errors and mistakes. The subscribed versions or the paid versions are the supposed correct versions, but you need to constantly subscribe to them. So you see the cost that goes into all these applications we are talking about, and how many schools would be able to spare their funding for such things when they have other needs of students or other needs of schools to meet. Yeah, Thank you, Miranda. Yes, anyone else?
There's
Um,
in the chat, Adele.
okay. I'm just going to- Okay, this is from thanks, Alicia. Alicia, okay, VR has a place. I don't think it belongs in the classroom all the time. I think it would be awesome to take them to a place that they can use it in some classes. Example, maybe science lab. Yes, you're correct. The safety concerns of dangerous labs are diminished. Yes, you're very right. It depends on when it comes to VR, AR, I think also it depends on the subjects that you're teaching or the concepts or topics you're teaching, and they don't really need to be in the classroom. They need to be in secluded areas. And I think when Dave was also talking, he made mention of I would say it's more about the emotion sickness for young children, because for adult children, they can still manage those emotion sickness when they use VR. But for younger ones, it's very scary, because I've experienced a student that blanked out just within 10 minutes of putting on the VR, and everybody was scared, like, what's the problem? So that emotion sickness is also a problem we're still looking at. So it takes them on a field trip that would be too costly. Yeah, that's part of the advantage. How the IEC brings VR into our school once per year for students to try trades such as welding, nursing, construction equipment, and also each school board, it has a person who has access to safe software. That is what we're talking about, software. You have to be trained. You need small group of students. So how many softwares, how many apps, how many tools can you use for all the students you have? At the end of the day, it becomes very time consuming, even for the teachers themselves. Yes. Thanks very much. Let's just go to I have the last two questions I want to, okay, these are the last two questions I want us to reflect on, and said, how do you think teachers can balance the appropriate use of emerging technologies in the classroom while avoiding underutilization on over-reliance? And what are the challenges you might have experienced as a teacher while using any of these tools in your classroom? How did you resolve that?
Hi, Ayadele. I'm not a teacher, but I'm a student, right? So for this, how do you think teachers can balance? One thing that struck me is the fact that when students know that they are just maybe like doing the work and just submitting and just getting feedback, they would not engage with the material. So they are not like learning to actually know, but they are learning to pass, the exam or whatever it is. So one thing I feel is presentation, something like this, right? So you know that you are going to present, and I think like a lot of students lack the skill, the presentation skill, because this is what they will actually use in the real world, right? When you're faced with a large crowd and then you have come up with a bulk of materials, how do you present it in 5 minutes? Right? Once you know that you have to like present this particular thing that you have done, maybe in few minutes, then you will engage more with the material because you want to get the key points. You want to really like know what the material entails and not just to pass an exam. So I think like we need to build the presentation skills in students, and it's really help them to, maybe balance the use of technology with their own critical thinking as well.
Thank you very much. Here, talking about presentation skills. And if I would reflect back to what Dave was saying, it's like there's a reason why you use something. So your reason for using the technology matters a lot, and the purpose for using should be driven, like should be well explained to the student. And I feel that is one way that this can be balanced. If you if we could tell them like this is the reason why we want to use this technology, students need to know the importance of this technology to their own personal life, to their own real experience for their future. They need to know, but they also need to understand that relying on these tools will not help them develop critical skills that are needed to survive in whatever career or in their academics. So I feel presentation in that way comes to enhancing students' understanding of the benefits, the positives, the negatives, and how they can probably, merge these two together. I don't know if anybody else have an idea on this question. Yes.
There's some suggestions in the chat.
I am looking at the chats. Don't over rely on this, Alicia. Don't over rely on tech as a backup for teaching. Yeah, just as students rely on it to do their homework. Not over relying. Kelsey, yes, I overstimulated that. By continuing to add, we'll heighten that. Look at what is happening now, that they can't have their phones. Yeah, not allowing them to rely too much. Miranda also shared an interesting one and says, I experienced this firsthand with my son, 5-year-old. I downloaded the learning app for the first time and he was simply doing coloring. He was so rapidly frustrated when he made mistakes and was angry. When it was time to put it away after 5 minutes, I have never seen that side of him before. Challenge technology working when we plan to use it. Yes, that is a big challenge. Sometimes they don't work when we want to use it, so we shouldn't rely too much on them. Oh, that's it. So Kelsey says, oh, that's X, so it doesn't always work. Dies too fast to actually use it to the full extent of what is needed for the learning activity. And Anne says, I agree, the benefits should weigh more than the disadvantages and risks. Thank you. Yes, I think those responses actually cover the two questions. We've looked at the challenges we experience, how we get frustrated when these technologies don't actually work, how students, even sometimes teachers, like kind of rely too much on it. And like we used to say, AI tools are just like supporting tools that needs to be used. They are more like instructional tools, so we shouldn't depend too much on them because we still need to put that humanistic nature of teaching in our classroom, and that is the only thing that can motivate our students to keep coming to us as teachers and to keep coming to the classroom. And I think that is the end of my presentation, so I can hand over to Jason. Thank you.
All yours, Jason.
Okay. So sit back, get ready for about 30 minutes of awesomeness. Just kidding. Okay, share screen. Here we go. Sorry, just looking for. That's not it. Sorry. Trying to find. Present. Sorry, I got two screens here. I was bringing the other thing across. Come on. Okay, can you see that? The artificial intelligence? No? Crap. Are you seeing split screen? Okay. I'll see what I can do with this. You're going to get the fast version. So we're talking about the VR and AI. I think it's important to note, I found a couple, research companies saying that in the next decade, AI is going to be like an $88 billion industry, and VR itself is going to be close to $65 billion. That's a lot of money. These companies aren't doing this stuff out of the kindness of their heart. If they can make some money, they're going to invest a lot of money. Now, with that being said, I was thinking of the whole VR thing. And when Chris Kennedy was giving his presentation, and I asked him a question about, how much does West Vancouver use VR? And he said very little. And I found that to be quite surprising. I figured, a district that's, on the map and ahead of the curve in a lot of ways was going to be using a lot of VR. So it was kind of surprising. I then posed the question to some of my colleagues in Regina Public, and some of them, I said, so what are you guys doing for using VR? And 3 of them said, I have no idea. I don't even know if we have any kits. I know Regina Catholic colleague said that they've got a kit, but she's never signed it out. So I don't know how much is actually happening in Regina, but it doesn't seem like a lot. And that's not, I only surveyed like 4 or 5 people, but in those 4 or 5 people, nobody was using it. So I found that kind of surprising. So we talked about the benefits of AR and VR in education. I'm not going to beat that one to death, but ability to personalize experiences, automate time-consuming tasks, improve student engagement, intelligent tutoring systems. That's one that I wanted to do with us today, but because of our time constraint, I'm not sure if we'll get to that, but I can show you an example of that in a moment. Part of the, the whole automating time-consuming tasks and stuff like that. I'm not sure if anybody is using Magic School. Just in the last few weeks, I've opened up my own account and started to explore that because it's part of my major project, going to be exploring Magic School and ChatGPT. There's a lot of things that it can do. I was going to do an activity with the image generator, but I changed my mind on that. So let's jump to the challenges. Of course, we talked about the high cost. The whole in my video, I talked about, like, for example, an Oculus costs about $700. We have one headset at our school, and it's an Oculus 2. And right now, they rolled out the Oculus 3. So, how long is it going to be before our Oculus 2 is not supported and they run out of apps and all that kind of stuff? So it is very, costs a lot of money to get into and to update and to keep going. If we wanted to have, 4 or 5 of those, where are we going to get the money? If we take the money from one area, you're going to lose out in the other area. The privacy and security concerns, I know Miranda brought that up. I got to be honest with, so exploring with the VR headset this last couple of weeks, I added and I'll show you a video clip. I added an International Space Station app that allows you to explore space and go on the space station. I did a dissecting one, and I added another one that allows me to swim underwater with manatees and fish and all that kind of stuff. Those 3 apps that I added to our school one, because they were free, I did not take any time to look at the privacy or the security stuff. I just downloaded it and went for it. Wanted to see how it would work. So that's pretty concerning. I should probably be reading that stuff. But for the all intents and purposes of this class, I didn't. I'll be totally honest with that. Now, let's go back there. The ethical implications such as cheating and bias, we talked lots about this. And I think a real important thing with the, getting our kids to not cheat is we need to teach them how to use that. And so I found this slide. And again, like any good teacher, beg, borrow, or steal. I got this from a Regina Catholic teacher who was at a AI workshop this fall. So she had some good stuff that she's able to share with me. But being able to teach our students, if our students are going to use AI, this was a great graphic that would allow, give us some guidance to do that. So disclosure, if they're using AI, they hand in something, just a disclosure statement, can be a simple statement that AI was used. Like I know a lot of us put in our annotations that we used AI. So that's pretty important. Using citations, you can see in this sample here, the citation talks about you're putting the prompt in that you used. Links to chats, so you're able to copy paste the link that you so in ChatGPT, I think it allows me to copy the link, and then I could share that with the teacher, or students could share that with us so we can see everything that they've done. We're even taking screenshots. So there's lots of ways that we can teach our students to be transparent when they use AI. We don't want to just, bring it up into the class and say, okay, you're allowed to use AI without any guidelines. If it's the Wild West, well, we're going to expect, everybody to probably get 97s and above and win at school, as we were hearing tonight. Okay, back to there. You guys can still see the slides? Yeah? Okay, good. Immersive I did that one, sorry. Challenges, that's where we are. Lack of human interaction. Let's jump to this one. At the end of the day, as great as AI is and virtual reality is, they are not magic bullets. They're not going to replace teachers. We are going to be, I think, an important part of the education system for a long time to come. These are just tools. I'm not afraid that they're going to replace us anytime soon. And all we need to do is look back to when the pandemic hit and we were doing, school virtually to realize that yeah, it worked for that time, but nothing beats that face-to-face learning. So I don't think we need to worry about that anytime soon. Okay, I'm gonna change gears for just a little bit. I got 3 minutes left. Okay, stop sharing that one. Share this. Where's my YouTube video? No. Dang. Sorry, everybody. Artificial. Oh, there it is. Okay, can you see my YouTube page? See the YouTube video? Okay, so this is me dissecting a little pig today. We're using the virtual headset, and now I'm going to peel back its skin, then I expose its rib cage, and I'll be cutting out the rib cage shortly in a bit. But the neat thing with that, the VR allows you to do some pretty cool things. In this case, I'm doing dissections. I suppose nothing beats the real thing, of course. And I know our science lab at my school is very lacking, so we probably don't have a lot of this stuff. So allowing kids to at least try it virtually might be, a good option. Like the space station one that I had. Hold on here. How do I get out of there? Okay, I can show you that one real quick. Maybe. Nope. Anyway, I know I got 1 minute left, so let's go back to this. My Chat GPT page. Hold on here. Share screen. Where's my Chat GPT page? There we go. Okay, so this is what we were going to do. I found this great prompt again from another teacher that allows you to create a tutor on ChatGPT, and I suppose you can do it in any large language model. But this is the prompt. I can share that with everybody after the fact. It creates this awesome, friendly tutor, and it asked me what I wanted to learn about today. So I asked it, I'd like to learn about the Pythagorean theorem. It said, great choice. Tell me what grade you're in. I said I'm in grade 10, but I read at a grade 3 level. And so it started giving me some information about the Pythagorean theorem. Then I asked it, though, can you show me some examples of some right triangles? And if you take a look at that image there, I don't think there's one actual real right triangle in there with 90 degrees and with the hypotenuse and the two sides. So right off the bat, I was like, okay, Chat GPT, no, it's hallucinating. It's not, as somebody who has the literacy, I already know that that's wrong. But my students who might not be very adept at the Pythagorean theorem and identifying right triangles might just be looking at that going, oh, right on, good stuff. And I'm going to keep going with that. So I guess there definitely are some limitations to that. And then I asked it to try to correct that. Still couldn't give me the right triangle. And then I on our reserve, there's a treaty payout that may be happening with cows and plows. So I asked it about that, and it gave me some. As I read through it, it's correct. So this one, I had to do my due diligence and figure that out. 901. Okay, I'm gonna stop there. I don't know. I've got some more things I could show you, but I'm cognizant of the time, and I know we got to go. Unless you want to give me more time next week, Dean.
Listen, if there's more, well, hey, first of all, thanks, Jason. And I feel a little, and again, there's no, I guess it's everybody's time. So I'm not going anywhere. So I'm always happy to stay longer, but I also realize people's, that's not necessarily fair to people who have other commitments and so forth. But anyway, thank you both, Hannafat, Aodell, and Jason for, again, revisiting these things and prompting us with some. The problem with all this stuff is it makes my head spin because I am really torn and really challenged all the time. And I like it in some ways, like, because I like the fact that I am continuing to learn, but it's also like, it's tough. It's tough things to wrestle with, but I appreciate the opportunities to do so. So real quick for next week, and I posted it in the course. Next week, we are going to have a 1 hour kind of wrap up sessions, and it's going to start at 4 o'clock because I'm going to be in Europe and I don't want to teach at 2 a.m. So it's going to be late enough as it is. So if that's okay with people, and I apologize if that throws people off, if they've got, 4 o'clock after school commitments or other things that they can't make it to. So if you're not able to, I understand that. That's okay. What I'm hoping that we will do, and I put it in there really quickly, first of all, there's a form I want you to fill out, which will serve as kind of the part around the network learning, which is 40% of the mark. So that's all this, it's the content catalyst, it's your blogs, it's all that participation stuff. So there's a form there that will kind of fill that out as a way to kind of assess yourself and your work in that area, as well as an opportunity if you want to change some of the weighting on your grading and want something to be worth more or less, you can have some opportunity there to have a little bit of a say in that and sort of lean into your strengths. I also would just love it if people would be willing to share 30 to 90 seconds. So it's not you have to put a presentation, but if you think about like, what's the one thing that I'm going to take away with? So from this course that's really going to stick. And so whether that is a particular speaker that just really you resonated with and that's been I talked earlier at some point about rabbit holes, going down a rabbit hole. If you had a rabbit hole, this was kind of a thing that I just went on my own to learn about, wasn't really necessarily part of our work. That might be a thing. It might be, just the challenges that you faced writing. Maybe writing is not a strength of yours, or maybe it is a strength. And then that's something that's really resonated with you around being able to capture your thinking and being able to share that, whatever it is. So that's kind of my hope, is that everybody kind of does a little share. I'm going to try to also sort of present my own summary of learning as an example, but model out a little bit about what that could look like for all of you. So yeah, it'll be kind of a little bit of a celebration of our learning together. Just a reminder, and I did post in the Discord channel, but just to make sure everybody's clear, major project I'm asking to be due by December 13th. And that's just something that you'll submit. So where you post that major project, it could be something that you're going to post on your blog, which is fine. Either way, even if you post on your blog, I would just appreciate an email. Yeah, sure. End of the day. And listen, for next week, are you talking about next week, Lisa? I mean, I'm just hoping it's a little casual, so people just share. And hey, you know what? How about this? If you can't make it, make a video to send with us. Maybe we'll do it that way. So that gives people an option. If they can't be there, they can share, here's my thing. Send me your video through whatever. So yeah, email me when you've completed it and just the link to it. Again, I can find it, but some people might not post it publicly. It might be a private YouTube link or whatever that might be. And then summary of learning, December 10th. So think about if next week's the last week, the 3rd or whatever that is, then that next week's work should be making your summary of learning. Gives you a chance to do that one. All right. Thanks, everybody.